Several weeks ago, I received, actually a couple of emails were coming out to all podcasters. Amazon is spinning up their podcasting thing. Google wanted to, obviously Amazon was coming into the marketplace and everyone is doing their thing.
Let's stop before you go on then.
Mm-hmm.
What? I heard this too. What is how does Amazon fit into the scheme of things? They're just jumping into everything.
Yeah, Amazon, now they also have an app store, for Android. They, of course, have Amazon Music, so they now have a new app, which is, lo and behold, Amazon Music and Podcast. And I think...
Oh, is it going to be as exciting as Amazon Music that's taken the world by storm?
Yeah, probably. So the way they do it is that they'll find their RSS feeds, podcast feeds, wherever they find them or scrape them or whatever they do. And in there is always an owner email that is deemed to be the owner of that feed. So they just send everybody an email saying, hey, you want to make sure you're on this hot new Amazon Music app? So go over here and register in the podcast portal. Which I went over there, checked. We were not on it. Okay, fine. That's exactly the way I'd want it to be. And besides, if we wanted to be on there, it was not something I would do myself. Around this time, Google also said, hey, if you don't want to be in it, Google's different. Their approach is, hey, if you don't want to be in our system, you've got to put this code in your feed. Thanks, Google. So now it's on me to stop them. Yeah. Thank you.
Come on, that's the way to do it.
That's the way to do it. And they do promise, even if you don't want to be in our podcast player, you will show up in search results. Mm-hmm. So Spotify also sent me an email to adam@curry.com. Hey, log into your podcaster portal. You can check your stats and do all kinds of stuff. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I know we're on Spotify. I know
we have a dashboard.
Well, so I log in. Now, this is a few weeks ago. I log in, and I have I have an account. It's adam@curry.com. It's been the same since day one. And there's no agenda. There's no podcast associated with me. I'm like, well, that's interesting. Of course, I knew I didn't put it up, so I never said, go ahead, put it there. So I click on the Got a Question link, and I fill out the form and say, what's up with that? And it said, my podcast is on your system, but it's not in my podcast portal. And so they send me an email back, okay, if you have a problem, click on this link to submit a copyright claim. Copyright claim. So I look at this link, and the link right there says, copyright claim, make sure you consult a lawyer before filling this out. I'm like, I'm not going to do anything like this. So I drop it, and I just forget it. And then all of a sudden, we're gone from Spotify. So this doesn't surprise me, because if you see what they are doing and where they're at right now, and where the industry is at, I believe they are shoring up all of their feeds so that they have agreements, because the agreement they want you to sign has a lot of things in there that would be open to discussion whether we want to be on there at all. And the most important, well, there's a couple of important points, but the biggest problem both of these apps, I'll put Amazon Music in there and Spotify, because it's Spotify Music and Podcast, is you cannot, under any circumstances, have any little bit, piece, snippet, or anything of music that you do not have cleared and licensed. This is the Achilles heel for Spotify, because they wanted to move away from paying for music. So if the algorithms, and there's plenty of them, and the music record companies have them, music publishers, if they detect some music in a podcast, they're immediately going to send Spotify a bill, who will then turn around and say, it's your fault, you promised you wouldn't do it, and send us a bill. Even if it's under fair use, I don't think we want to necessarily have to deal with that. Our end of show mixes would have to stop for sure. But otherwise, they want all right and title, worldwide license. They can edit, they can transform, transmorgify, they can chop down, remove, do whatever they want with your show. They can actually change the file.
No good. That's no
but good. This is really not what it's about. This is about the Spotify podcast automatic ad insertion. And they touted this back in January. There's a couple of links in the show notes. You can
this
take
is no
a look.
good.
Yeah,
No good.
So they are promising targeting at a very specific level by gender, age, race, musical taste, sexuality. They're building huge profiles in everybody, because if you think about it, what you learn from someone's music can be quite a lot. Also, who you share your playlist with. So they are promising, and it could be true. They are promising the Facebook of Facebook advertising of podcasts, and this they really made a big deal about this this advertising system they have, and I think they purchased some technology as well, and it's already rolling out. So obviously, if you don't have an agreement with a podcast or with the person who owns the feed, and all of a sudden you start throwing advertising in there, that can be confusing for a lot of people. And so this is, I have one example, because what they're doing is they're inserting it before the show starts, not in the show itself. And oh, by the way, you're allowed to have your own promotional paid promotions, as long as it doesn't promote a competing service or speak badly about Spotify, as long as there's no hate speech, is all the typical rules that are in there. So this is just a dorky ass podcast. Whatever happened to the I think, what is it called? It was just a great example. Whatever happened to pizza at McDonald's, which has nothing to do with pizza at McDonald's. But when you start the podcast, this is what happens.
You're ready to buy a car. You're faced with, wow, who can I trust? I'm Car Pro Jerry Reynolds. At Car Pro USA, we match you to the right dealer near you.
So I think these are 20 or 30-second spots that they play in front of the podcast that they've now targeted to advertise. And here's the transition. Right, so you can hear that's obviously just the dorky podcast. But they're still working on their targeting. I don't know if it's because I'm in Austin, but if you load the next episode or refresh the episode, I got this one.
Conquista el otoño de JCPenney. Aprovecha los doorbusters de jueves a domingo en la tienda y jcp.com mientras duren. Como selección de camisetas.
I always thought JCPenney in Spanish would be fun. Yeah, I'll take it to the end here.
Condiciones y exclusiones. Detalles en la tienda o jcp.com.
Before we begin today's program,
Nightmare.
I would like to make the following huge announcement.
So that's going to be in front of every podcast. And I am a paid subscriber. This is not just, and they have said that they will do this for paid people, for members who pay too. It's not just going to be for.
What's the point of paying if you're going to get inundated with lousy advertising? It sounds more like the platform is good for advertisers.
Yeah.
I mean, for podcasters who are advertisers. In other words, I think it would be funny to have no agenda ads in front of all these other podcasts.
Well, that we could probably do a buy. That would be a lot more interesting for us, I think.
Yeah. I don't know why you're listening to this podcast. We've got a better one.
And they've really rolled out a whole suite of tools. They offer free voices, production. They're really trying to get everybody in to do these podcast ads. Now, even though that particular feed, which was an active feed, was taken down, apparently there's another one, which is someone else put us up, and I guess it's an archive, and you can still find it through Google, and it doesn't really matter for us to determine, do we want to be on there at all?
Well, obviously, we can't be on there. It makes no sense at all whatsoever. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But you determined that, I think, since this is your bailiwick,
yeah,
you determined that this was not going to work out for us under any circumstances. I think when they first announced this a year ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Even though we didn't really know the whole advertising play, we figured that's what they'd be doing.
Well, it's worse than that. It seems worse than what you anticipated.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of restrictions, and it's just, it reminds me so much of the book contract that I got for my book. I look at the contract, I'm like, no, we can't adhere to that. We're always going to talk something sexist or misogynist or hateful. That's all in the eye of the beholder. And that's all in the terms of service. We can, if we put it back on, we'll be off soon, especially in light of what seems to be going on over there.
Well, the problem is with the book contracts is less of a problem because book contracts are notorious for being dummy contracts. And the book business has been in business forever, and these people, they put these contracts out and only dummies sign them.
Sure.
So they're very negotiable.
Yes, but
the problem with these podcast ideas is that everybody's a dummy.
Yeah.
So, so everyone's just going to sign off on this when, in fact, and there will be no precedent for writing your own contracts. I mean, maybe Joe Rogan has a much better looking contract than the rest of them, but it doesn't sound like it from the way things are going.
Well, I would say the most interesting part of it is that there's no actual mention of sharing any revenue with advertising that's put in front of your show. They don't seem to have any, at least no noticeable plan for that. Not that we would want that, but so you get into this situation where people, and this is exactly what they want. It's what Amazon wants to do. It's what Google wants to do. Everybody wants, iHeartRadio wants to do this. We have exclusive shows. Brene Brown just went to Spotify. Oh, everybody. Ooh. And I'm not against Spotify being in the, let me just say it, the podcasting space. Thank you. If their app has stuff that's exclusive to them, that's okay. But if you cannot add a podcast feed manually, then that is not a podcast player, and you should not rely on it for your podcast. For this is just one show, ours. The next one will be something else, and that'll get taken down, and you're just going to have to deal with multiple apps eventually anyway. So I just don't see a necessity for us to do it, and quite honestly, I'm not so sure about how happy we should be with the Google Play stuff either. And there's one more, Stitcher. Those guys.
Well, they've always been, I'm going to use the word problematic.
I can take the problematic down to the specific problem. They re-encode, at least last time I checked, they re-encode the actual file, and they'll put ads in that. And Stitcher's been running ads in front of podcasts for a long time. And I know I've sent them many requests. Hey, how does this work? And they just don't reply. There's no way to reply. There's nothing comes back. There. Yeah, nobody there at all. So, yes, no morality clauses for us is I guess what I'm saying. No morality clause. Why should we let anybody make any money off of us, off of the hard work, 15 years of support from our Gitmo Nation producers? I don't think that's, I just don't feel good about it. So,
well, they can make money the way our ancillary operations make money, the cup manufacturers and the people who do T-shirts and other, and that sort of things. They can just kindly put our podcast up and just leave it there.
You grant Spotify a non-exclusive, transferable, sub-licensable, royalty-free, fully paid, worldwide license to download, digitally transcode, modify, make copies of,
can't do that.
Create derivative works from.
No, that's out. Can't do that.
All right.
The podcast is a standalone.
Yes, exactly.
Unless somebody specifically, Jennifer Buchanan, Dame Jennifer, does stuff that's beneficial to the podcast. In other words, the stuff she does is for the podcast. It's not for, it wouldn't be, Spotify does stuff for Spotify.
Yeah.
That's no good.
Exactly. So I think we've had our meeting, right?
Seems so, yeah.
Okay.
I thought we already had this meeting sometime back.
But everyone gets really confused. And it's like, this censorship, I'm canceling. There's no evidence of censorship.
No, I think they're fine. I think that's exactly the attitude they should have.
Okay. That's John C. Dvorak. Yeah, tell them it's censorship, damn it.
You had it before. You're just playing it. Now you're not playing it anymore, you bastards.